Scientists are still baffled over the mystery of corn circles in fields in southern England. Anything from whirlwinds to UFOs have been suggested as the cause of the strange shapes.
For decades, crop circles have baffled farmers, scientists, and skywatchers alike. Were they elaborate hoaxes, messages from extraterrestrials, or something even more disturbing? Now, after years of speculation, suppressed evidence, and a shocking new leak from a European defense contractor with supposed exclusive actual footage, the mystery may finally be solved.
It may well be that we are being visited by other intelligences, and maybe they feel like leaving some graffiti in the fields.
What's been uncovered doesn't just change what we thought we knew. It shakes the very foundation of the phenomenon. The crop circle mystery seems to be finally solved, and it's shocking. The circles that shouldn't exist. It began, as many great mysteries do, with a farmer and a field. Ordinary men tending ordinary land, only to awaken to something so extraordinary that it left them stunned and silent. What they saw was not mere vandalism, nor the messy remnants of machinery. It was something symmetrical, too precise, too quiet, and it hadn't been there the day before. At first glance, these formations resembled little more than disruptions in nature, flattened stalks of wheat, barley, or corn, forming crude rings or spirals that many assumed were the work of pranksters or weather. But as more reports came in, and more formations appeared across southern England, the patterns began to defy easy explanation. Some appeared to stretch across entire fields. Others displayed elegant symmetry and layered geometry that seemed to require an architect's hand. And yet no footprints, tire marks, or tools were ever found. They were vast, complex, and appeared overnight, often without anyone seeing or hearing a thing. Some patterns measured hundreds of feet in diameter. Others featured intricate repeating elements, radial balance, and fractal symmetry so advanced it challenged even modern computer-aided design. The questions came fast. Who was making them? How could they do it so quickly, so perfectly, and so silently? By the late 1980s and early 1990s, the phenomenon had exploded into the public consciousness, largely focused around the counties of southern England, especially Wiltshire. This was the heartland of crop circles, where new formations would appear almost weekly during the summer months, sometimes within sight of ancient monuments like Stonehenge or Silbury Hill. Pilots and drone operators began capturing aerial footage of the designs, many only fully visible from above, and the world watched in amazement. But just as quickly as fascination grew, so did skepticism. Media outlets seized on footage of men using boards and ropes to create crop circles. Debunkers labeled the phenomenon an elaborate prank, a cultural meme, or an evolving form of land art. The scientific establishment dismissed the entire subject, lumping it in with UFO sightings and pseudoscience. Investigative segments often featured crude replications that looked similar enough, if you squinted, and the public, by and large, moved on. And yet, something didn't add up. A persistent undercurrent of curiosity refused to die. While many crop circles were easily explained as human-made hoaxes, a handful were not. These were the circles that shouldn't exist, the ones that displayed abnormal plant damage, electromagnetic disturbances, and an eerie absence of any evidence of human involvement. These were the patterns that emerged in minutes, not hours. That featured ratios and fractals so mathematically precise, they appeared to come from something, or someone, with a vastly superior understanding of geometry and form. Even seasoned skeptics found themselves stumped by the most advanced formations. Lab tests on plants taken from within certain circles revealed strange node damage, as if the stalks had been briefly exposed to intense bursts of microwave energy. Others showed no physical trauma at all, as though the plants had simply decided to lean into position. The hoax theory explained many things, but it couldn't explain them all. And in that unexplained margin, the 1% of circles that defied logic, something truly strange was taking root. The origins, a devil's harvest. The earliest account of a crop circle didn't come from a ufologist or a modern-day conspiracy theorist. It came from a 17th-century English pamphlet titled The Mowing Devil. Dated 1678, the illustration inside shows a pitchfork-wielding devil surrounded by perfectly circular cuts in a field of oats. The accompanying story is short but disturbing. A farmer, angered by a laborer's price for mowing his field, cursed the job aloud, saying he would rather see the devil himself reap the crops. That night, a strange glow was seen above the field. By morning, the crops had been flattened in precise circular patterns. At first glance, the tale appears folkloric, just another example of England's long history of supernatural legends. But historians and researchers have come to regard the mowing devil not merely as a cautionary tale, but as a clue. Because while this might have been the first time such a pattern was documented in print, it certainly wasn't the last. Throughout the 18th and 19th centuries, scattered accounts of mysterious field formations continued to appear in Europe. They were rare and largely ignored, curiosities with no clear explanation. But they laid the foundation for something far more dramatic that would unfold in the next century. It wasn't until the late 1970s that crop circles began appearing in greater frequency. The patterns were simpler then. Rings and rudimentary spirals, often dismissed as oddities or the result of weather phenomena like whirlwinds. But by the 1980s, the formations had become more elaborate, and by the early 1990s, they were breathtaking, featuring intricate designs that mimicked sacred geometry, Mayan glyphs, and even mathematical fractals like the Mandelbrot set. More than 80% of these crop circles appeared in a single region, Wiltshire, a county steeped in ancient mysticism and sacred geography. It is here that the prehistoric monument Stonehenge stands, along with Avebury's stone circles and Silbury Hill, the largest man-made mound in Europe. For many researchers, this was no coincidence. The concentration of crop circles in this region raised new questions. Were these formations a modern phenomenon or part of a deeper, older pattern? Could the ancient people who built megalithic structures on this land have known about, or even interacted with, whatever force was creating these circles? As the patterns grew more complex and the locations more precise, one thing became increasingly clear. This was not random. Whether created by people, phenomena, or something else entirely, crop circles had a history. One that stretched back centuries and refused to be reduced to mere vandalism or weather. They were part of something older, something that had been watching the fields for a long, long time. The hoax that backfired. By the summer of 1991, the world was ready for a neat conclusion. Crop circles had become a cultural phenomenon, splashed across tabloids and television screens, drawing tourists and thrill-seekers to the English countryside. Then came the twist the media had been waiting for. Two elderly gentlemen, Doug Bauer and Dave Chorley, stepped forward and confessed. Their story was disarmingly simple. For more than a decade, they claimed, they had wandered into fields under cover of darkness with little more than a plank of wood, a length of rope, and a desire to fool the world. They demonstrated their technique on live television, stamping out basic circles with practiced ease. Newspapers declared the mystery solved. Scientists, long embarrassed by the phenomenon, breathed a sigh of relief. Skeptics dismissed the entire crop circle saga as a quaint bit of public gullibility, now exposed and deflated. But beneath the surface, something didn't sit right. Bauer and Chorley's demonstration was crude, effective at showing how some simple circles could be made, yes, but the elegance and precision of the most intricate crop formations were another matter entirely. Their claims couldn't account for the complexity that had emerged in recent years. The enormous scale, the flawless geometric symmetry, the mathematical encoding hidden within certain designs. Some patterns were so complex they mirrored Fibonacci sequences, binary data, and even representations of four-dimensional tesseracts, concepts far beyond the capability of two aging pranksters working by lantern light in the dead of night. Worse still, when pressed for specifics, Bauer and Chorley became evasive. They couldn't recall the dates or locations of many formations they claimed to have made. They admitted to being inspired by earlier crop circles, suggesting they weren't the originators after all, but copycats riding a wave that had already begun. They could not explain why no footprints were found leading to or from certain designs. nor how some appeared within protected areas that were under 24-hour surveillance or designated no-fly zones. Perhaps the most damning evidence came not from what the men said, but from what they failed to address. The anomalies, scientific and physical, that accompanied the most perplexing formations. Their confession was enough to pacify the press. The story faded from headlines, folded neatly into the public record as a solved curiosity. But for the researchers who had seen the data, who had stood in the fields where compasses spun erratically and plants bore signs of internal trauma, the hoax narrative didn't hold. The majority of crop circles, it turned out, were indeed man-made, but not all. That 1%, the small handful of formations that displayed properties beyond explanation, remained. And it is often in that 1% where truth hides. Inside the nodes, science can't look away. While the mainstream media had moved on, a quiet revolution was taking place in the laboratories of curious botanists and physicists who refused to ignore the evidence left behind in crop circle sites. The first clue lay within the plants themselves, specifically in the nodes, the small joints that connect segments of the stalk. What scientists found was astonishing. In several formations, those that had appeared overnight without human witnesses, the nodes of the plants were not crushed or broken, as one might expect from mechanical flattening. Instead, they were bent at precise angles, as though softened from within. Some exhibited signs of expulsion cavities, tiny holes blown through by what appeared to be intense, localized bursts of energy. It looked as though the plants had been flash-heated, causing internal moisture to expand and burst outward. Yet the plants were not scorched. There was no burn residue, no evidence of fire or flame. The effect resembled exposure to microwave radiation, brief, powerful, and invisible. This wasn't theory or pseudoscience. These results came from published lab work, conducted by figures like biophysicist Dr. William Levengood, who spent years collecting and analyzing samples from crop formations. His findings consistently showed anomalies in plant biology, elongated nodes, rapid dehydration patterns, and abnormal germination rates in seeds from inside the circles. And the mystery only deepened. Soil samples taken from within several formations revealed another bizarre clue: the presence of microscopic metallic spheres, primarily composed of iron, often magnetized and fused into clusters. These tiny spherules, rarely found in surrounding soil, raised urgent questions. Were they remnants of some unknown machinery, fallout from an atmospheric event, or something more exotic altogether? Operation Blackbird, the government watches. By 1990, the crop circle mystery had moved beyond rural curiosity and into the realm of international attention. What began as an enigmatic phenomenon observed mostly by farmers and fringe researchers was now drawing the interest of the press, scientists, and, unmistakably, the government. That year, Colin Andrews, a trained electrical engineer and one of the foremost investigators into the crop circle mystery, spearheaded a bold initiative, Operation Blackbird. The goal was simple, at least in theory: to observe in real time the creation of a crop circle using high-quality surveillance equipment. Andrews and his team, with cooperation from the BBC and military representatives, established a monitoring site in Wiltshire, England, a known crop circle hotspot. Floodlights were installed, night vision cameras were positioned. Technicians and researchers worked in shifts, monitoring the fields 24 hours a day. If anything appeared, they would capture it. But nothing happened. Days passed. Fields remained untouched. No mysterious lights, no overnight patterns, no circles. The operation became a media spectacle, and when it yielded no results, the press turned on Andrews. Reporters mocked the operation as a waste of time and resources. Critics claimed the entire crop circle mystery had been undone by a simple lack of evidence. Andrews, once regarded as a serious researcher, was publicly shamed. But the humiliation masked a darker truth, one that Andrews later revealed, and which continues to haunt the community of researchers who haven't given up the mystery. During the operation, Andrews received disturbing intelligence. Just beyond the fields under surveillance, a classified military exercise was being conducted. Though the official explanation was vague, routine drills and equipment testing, Sources close to Andrews claimed that advanced electromagnetic equipment and aircraft had been deployed in the vicinity. The very night the monitoring equipment was at full operation, personnel witnessed unusual radar activity just beyond the perimeter. And yet, not a single formation appeared. Then came something even stranger. Shortly after the operation ended, an unknown man approached Andrews outside of a press conference. Well-dressed, calm, and speaking with an accent Andrews couldn't quite place, the man congratulated him on his efforts, then offered him a large sum of money to abandon the research entirely. When Andrews refused, the man grew cold. He warned him that continuing to investigate would attract attention, and that his life would become uncomfortable. Within weeks, Andrews began receiving anonymous phone calls, silence on the line, or static. His mail was tampered with, and most chilling of all, a crew member reviewing on-site footage noticed something peculiar in the background of one of their video broadcasts. The same man who approached Andrews was visible, lingering behind the media tents, watching the team from a distance. When the footage was analyzed, no identification could be made. The man was never traced. No agency admitted knowledge of him. Andrews, facing mounting pressure, withdrew from public life. His credibility was destroyed in the eyes of the press. But to those who had worked alongside him, it was clear. He had come too close to something he wasn't supposed to uncover. And while Operation Blackbird failed to catch a crop circle being made, it may have exposed something far more significant: the extent to which authorities were quietly involved, or at the very least deeply interested, in the phenomenon. The Fractal Revelation. While Operation Blackbird faded from public memory, the mystery of the crop circles didn't die. It evolved. In August 1991, nestled in a field just outside Cambridge, a crop formation emerged unlike anything that had been seen before. It was not merely circular or artistic, it was mathematical. A perfect depiction of the Mandelbrot set, a complex fractal shape known to mathematicians for its infinite self-repeating geometry. The shape appeared with stunning precision, as if etched with digital machinery rather than pressed by human hands. To those familiar with the concept, the appearance was staggering. The Mandelbrot set isn't just a symbol, it's a visual representation of chaos theory, of recursive order buried within randomness. It requires an understanding of imaginary numbers, of non-Euclidean geometry. It is not something casually found in nature, nor easily recreated by amateurs with planks and string. And yet there it was, perfectly executed in flattened wheat, with no sign of human entry, and no tracks leading to or from the site. It had appeared overnight. News spread quickly, drawing mathematicians, crop circle enthusiasts, and skeptics alike. The formation's proportions reflected a deep understanding of not only fractals, but the Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratio, patterns known for appearing in nature, architecture, and sacred geometry. Whoever or whatever had created it was not simply making art. They were transmitting knowledge, encoded in fields of grain. The BBC attempted to replicate the Mandelbrot formation for a televised demonstration, enlisting a group equipped with GPS, planks, ropes, and measuring equipment. Despite their preparation, the final result lacked the detail, balance, and coherence of the original. Slight imperfections in line width, deviations in symmetry, and human error were all evident under aerial photography. The implication was hard to ignore. The original design had been made with a level of intelligence and precision beyond what casual hoaxers could deliver. Speculation mounted. Was this a form of nonverbal communication? A symbolic message using the universal language of mathematics? Then it was also a question of why they were in certain locations. The Laylines and sacred sites. As the mystery of crop circles deepened in complexity, a growing number of independent researchers began turning to geography. Not just for location data, but to test a hunch. Were these formations appearing at random, or was there a deeper spatial intelligence behind their placements? The first clues came when mapping teams began overlaying crop circle coordinates onto existing leyline charts, those ancient alignments first proposed by antiquarian Alfred Watkins in the 1920s. Watkins had theorized that prehistoric sites across Britain, stone circles, burial mounds, ancient churches, were not randomly placed, but deliberately built along straight lines of energy. While his ideas were dismissed by mainstream academia for decades, the leyline concept took on a second life among esoteric circles, spiritualists, and later, researchers of unexplained phenomena. When crop circle locations were plotted against ley lines, the result was startling. Nearly 80% of the most intricate and unexplained formations, those with geometric complexity, mathematical ratios, or strange electromagnetic effects, appeared either directly on or very near ley lines. Many of these were tightly clustered in Wiltshire, not far from the world-famous megaliths of Stonehenge and Avebury, sites that have long been suspected to rest atop energy nexuses or telluric currents. At first, skeptics argued this was nothing more than statistical noise. Patterns would emerge in any dataset if one looked hard enough. But that argument became less convincing as formations repeatedly emerged in sacred, historically significant areas across the globe. Glastonbury, Silbury Hill, and the Ridgeway Path, all ancient ceremonial landscapes, became frequent hotspots. Similar alignments began showing up in international cases as well. Peru's Nazca Lines, Egypt's Giza Plateau, and even the slopes of Machu Picchu in the Andes. The implications were unsettling. Were the creators, whoever or whatever they were, deliberately choosing these locations? And if so, why? Mirage men, art or intelligence? While much of the crop circle debate swirled around science, spirituality, and speculation, another dimension began to reveal itself, one far more human and more sinister. Then in the mid-2000s, artist and self-described circle maker John Lundberg released the unsettling documentary Mirage Men, showcasing real actual footage, showing a deep dive into the role of government disinformation in UFO culture and crop circle mythology. What began as a meditation on art and belief quickly morphed into something darker, a first-hand account of how intelligence agencies had not only observed the phenomenon, but actively infiltrated and manipulated the communities obsessed with it. At the center of the story was Richard Doty, a former U.S. Air Force intelligence officer who made a chilling confession. For years, he had been instructed to plant false documents, invent outlandish stories, and feed fabricated evidence to eager UFO researchers. Doty admitted to crafting elaborate hoaxes, faked crash reports, invented alien autopsies, doctored footage, all with one goal: to muddy the waters. He even confessed to pushing the now infamous Roswell alien narrative, not as a truth, but as a psychological operation. But why? The motives remain murky. Some believe the disinformation was designed to cover up real military projects, cloaking them in the absurdity of aliens and crop circles so that no one would take leaks seriously. Others believe the objective was psychological, to destabilize individuals, drive researchers to obsession and paranoia, discredit whistleblowers, and fracture communities that might stumble upon something real. If Doty and his counterparts were willing to go so far to confuse the truth, it raised a terrifying question: what was being hidden? And Lundberg's own role complicated matters even further. As one of the original circle makers, he admitted to creating crop formations, some of them extremely intricate, as part of a social experiment in belief. But as he delved deeper, even Lundberg began to wonder if he had been a pawn in a larger game. He spoke of moments where he was watched, followed, even subtly guided towards certain sites or motifs, as if someone else had wanted those formations made. Could the government have used the hoaxers as unknowing instruments to sow confusion? Or worse, were they creating a smokescreen to hide genuine phenomena behind layers of man-made mimicry? The Mirage Men narrative didn't just shake the UFO world, it rattled the foundations of crop circle research. If disinformation was seeded so deeply, then even the truth was suspect. Hoaxes could be engineered, witnesses could be manipulated. Real formations could be dismissed because fakes had saturated the landscape. The question was no longer just what is real. It was who decides what we believe and why they want to control the narrative in the first place. Now, more than 4 decades after the phenomenon first burst into public consciousness, the truth about crop circles seems both closer and more elusive than ever. What are your theories on this? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Until next time.